Can anyone who really loves sports cars get behind the idea of a hybrid 911? One that weighs 1,600 kilograms. I mean, can they?
The joys of the open Spanish road, covered in quarry dust and God knows what else. This thing really does work on the road. If I sound a bit forlorn, it's because instinctively I want to be against the near 1,600 kilogram 911 that's a bit too big and whose cabin irritates me, because it's not, maybe it's not where the car should have ended up, but it's so hard to argue with these things when you get in them. This, as an everyday car, is damn impressive. It's a bit blunt, it's a bit numb, but it's either that or an old 911, which you can still buy, but it's still roughly the same size as this unless you go far back as a 997, and that's not really an everyday car now. Could be, I suppose. Otherwise, it's impressive. This engine is so good for the daily grind. You just got fantastic roll-on torque. It manages to pull forwards in quite high gears without needing to drop down at all. So in sort of step-off driving from 0 to 40 miles an hour, it feels 10 times quicker than a 3-litre turbo, because that electric assistance to the turbocharger means its big old single lung just goes whoosh. I like this weight to the steering on the road. I can place the car just where I want to. It's accurate. One thing we don't celebrate enough about the 911 is the lack of tyre noise. It used to be a tyre noise nightmare, the 911. 997s, 996s, the rear wheel arch areas, the wheel wells, they're just like speaker cabinets for a great big Michelin in the back or whatever it is. Goodyear on this car. Not good. They were noisy cars. This doesn't have anything like the tyre roar. I suppose I prefer to think of them as being a bit more like 928s now. They're bigger, more GT cars, aren't they? But it can pick up its heels if it wants to. But it sounds much more realistic than anything I've had that's had an augmented sound in a Porsche before. The electronic dash, I should hate it, but it hasn't got the silly dials around the corners because they were hidden before. Now nothing's hidden, and you've also got this option on the multiple dash readouts to have a rev counter that has the 7 at the vertical, like an old racing Porsche that's had its dial turned around. It's a lovely touch that I really quite like. I still don't get why there's a cup holder there. It's in the way of everything, really. It's too far back. I don't know why the window switches are so far back. Weird quirks of the ergonomics of the 992, but you know, it is what it is. But this anti-lag single turbo engine, it's not really a hybrid at all, is it? It's something else, it really is. 50 kilogram penalty. Because there's no lag, it feels like a very large capacity normally aspirated engine. I'm talking like 6-7 litre engine where you just touch the throttle and it goes, staying in the same gear. And they've done something quite clever with the noise. Trying to explain roll-on flexibility through the medium of voice is quite difficult. Just believe me, this has got so much flexibility. Hadn't expected it to be quite so good. Call me shrill, call me what you want. What are the downsides? It's too big. They're very expensive. I still wonder what this car would be like if it weighed 1,300 kilograms and had a smaller engine. I think they're being pushed into an area where legislation's forcing them to chase this Lambda 1 figure. So Google this now. Go and Google Lambda 1. Effectively, when it's running a bit colder, it's in town and the cats aren't too hot, you can keep an engine like this producing this Lambda 1 figure that you need for the emissions targets. Once you get going faster, you can't. The cats get hotter, and it's a problem. That's why they've got this hybrid solution for the turbocharger. I will say this, I have no idea what this tech's going to be like in a 992.2 turbo. That's going to be mind-bending. It's going to have about 750 horsepower and instant torque through a four-wheel drive system. It's all food for thought. If I'd expected some weird mild hybrid that was plug-in and could do, 15 miles around town, and it was just useless mass being carried around for the sake of appeasing emissions regs, that's not what this car's about. It's being deployed to make it faster. I defy anyone not to be impressed by the immediacy and just the seamlessness. It's tech that I'm not feeling. I said that on the track, but for me, great tech is tech that just makes you smile. You don't really think about how it's making you smile. This does. And it'll do massive skids on a track. Like being a child. Do I miss a manual? I'd like a manual, but I don't think it all works with a manual. And actually today, with the way this thing develops its torque, it's I'm not missing it that much. Maybe I'm getting old. Could be. Well, I am. A facelift 992, as they say in all the internet forums, 992.2. That's what this is,
exactly.
Yes?
We call it in Germany 992 PA, which means Produktaufwertung, but I think
Oh,
it's
I like
internationally
that.
not
I like that. That's
good to understand.
nice bit of German. So we have got some styling differences, but let's talk about this powertrain first. I'm going to pop the hood. As ever with a Porsche, there's nothing to see here, but it's much easier talking about an engine if you've got the boot bonnet up. So talk me through the philosophy of this GTS, as you call it, T-hybrid.
Yeah, we call it T-hybrid. T means turbo. 911 is all about tradition and innovation, and we wanted to give the car hybrid power, but not hybrid weight. So the overall weight adding of the car is about 50 kilograms.
So it's half a tank of fuel with a driver in.
90% of fuel.
Yes.
Something like that.
So the question for me is this: the turbocharger is the innovation here.
Yeah.
So a turbocharger with an electric motor inside it. Is that
Yeah.
straight from the 919?
It's some sort of the 919 idea, but we put it into one single component. So we have the electric motor on the e-turbo, and we can spool it up very fast because we're putting up to 20 kilowatts of power for some milliseconds.
Tell me how big this turbocharger is. Give me an
like,
idea.
Like a truck turbo. It's a really big one, but
because you can spin it up using the electric motor,
Yeah.
you don't have the lag.
yeah, exactly. We put up to 20 kilowatts of power into it, so for some milliseconds to spool it up as quickly as possible, so you don't have that hybrid or turbo feeling itself. It feels like a big natural aspirated engine.
I can tell you that it does do that.
Yeah. Yeah,
so the packaging, we don't need a starter motor.
Yep.
Do we have a conventional?
No belt drive.
No conventional generator.
Nope. No belt drive.
No belt drive at all.
Yep, exactly. That's why we could optimize the package itself. And we now feed even the PDCC system, Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control.
With the high voltage.
With the high voltage, which means it's even more dynamic.
Faster.
Faster. We can lift the car with a lift system and PDCC in 1 second. So it's really fast.
So it's like an ejector seat.
Yeah, not that fast, but it's really impressive if you drive it.
So the philosophy is to try and reduce turbo lag.
Yep.
To try and keep the flat six
Yep.
911 feeling. We've got a battery in the front. How much does that weigh? 25, 27 kilograms, something like
Yeah,
this?
it's like an old 12-volt battery, something like that, 27 kilograms. And we call it boost battery.
Is this lithium or is it normal?
It's lithium,
Yeah.
and very special lithium. We have a very, very high power to energy ratio. That's why we call it a boost battery, because we can feed energy very fast into it and give it out very fast to the car. You come to a situation where you can boost with the electric motor in the gearbox,
Yes.
and recuperate at the same time with a turbocharger into the battery, or give the power onto the electric motor. So very complex energy management.
Is it PDK only or is there a manual?
It's PDK only.
For this setup?
For this setup of the GTS, yeah, exactly.
And you can have two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you get a bigger fuel tank if you have two-wheel drive in Germany? You do?
Exactly. You have
Okay.
an 84-liter option
Yes.
for the C2 model.
Okay.
Exactly.
There's a motor inside the big
Yep.
turbocharger. There's another one inside the gearbox.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so explain how that. You've explained how you can recuperate, but how does the deployment work?
We have this electric motor between the combustion engine and the gearbox, but we wanted to lower the weight again. So that's why we made it a bit smaller, not that heavy, and still able to put down all the power we want in this concept.
But how much power do we have internal combustion engine? How much do we have electric power?
From the electric point of view, we can put up to 40 kilowatts onto the electric motor.
Okay.
They are split roughly about 29 kilowatts from the HV battery and 11 kilowatts from the e-turbo. And in total, we have a power output of that car of 541 horsepower.
Yes.
And if you subtract the electric
It's
power
about
from it,
490.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
for
I mean,
the combustion.
540 not long ago was the output of a full turbo.
Yep, exactly.
So it's really quite potent. It's a very, very complicated exercise, isn't it? It is complicated. The calibration of the engine, The way, for example, the way it starts is unlike any 911 I've driven.
Yeah, and it starts very fast. So if you hit the bottom, you don't have the old starter motor from 12 volt. You start with the electric motor for, and it's just bam.
It is a hybrid, but it's not really a hybrid. I'd call it the ultimate anti-lag device. You know, all those years you saw rally cars flying through the woods and you hear them go off throttle, bang, 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 bang. That was fuel being thrown into a turbocharger to keep the compressor spinning, to produce boost, and that you'd lose that boost out of a wastegate or a blow-off valve. This is doing the same thing effectively, isn't it? But it has no wastegate.
Nope, no wastegate.
So this is it. You're effectively using an electric motor to keep that turbine spinning, and you feel it on the road. You don't have conventional turbo lag. Okay, some more questions from me. At idle, you start the car, you press the button, bah, it launches into life like a 918 Spider.
Yep.
Same thing.
Something
But
like
then it settles to quite an interesting idle. It doesn't sound like a flat six. Sometimes it sounds a bit like a V8 almost.
Yeah.
Have you just been playing with the harmonics?
We played a bit with it, and we wanted to give the engine still a natural, potent sound. And I hope we succeeded.
Yeah. What about the noise in Sport Plus? I've just driven it on track. It's loud.
Yeah.
Watch this. I'm going to shut the engine lid. That's your lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Superstar. Typically, I've come here wanting to think this is a waste of time, but it's not. I've just wobbled it up the road. You're not aware of any of the tech. I think I've worked out that I like tech, that I'm not aware of how well tech's working. And this is another example of that. So we're at the circuit now, Ascari. It's just rained, which is unhelpful. And I'm going to do some laps and just work out how this electric hybrid-y thing, T-hybrid, why did they launch it calling it hybrid? Because it doesn't behave like a hybrid. It's effectively electric torque filling, isn't it? That's what it's doing. So what's really interesting is you've got this electric deployment gauge on the dash, which most cars have these days that have a level of hybridity. So what happens with this is you accelerate and you see the electricity being deployed, but then it cuts away and goes back to harvesting. So effectively what you're seeing is the electric motor inside that turbocharger is helping spool up the turbo, but then once it's got the turbo going, the turbo takes over, and then the electric motor starts to harvest the energy that turbocharger is producing. Again, it's all a bit new. I've not seen it on a car before. So the question most of us will be asking is, how much more weight do you feel? It's a 50 kilogram weight penalty. So this thing is nigh on 1,600 kilograms now, probably a bit more by the time you put a full tank of fuel in it and some mates. Around here, I'm feeling a little bit more on the front axle, if I'm honest with you, a little bit. Not masses, a little bit of understeer. It doesn't feel an awful lot heavier than before. This is the problem. Every time mass increases in a car, the big four-headed types find a cheat to make it seem a bit lighter than it should do. The torque fill means that it feels like a 5-litre normally aspirated engine between about 1 and 3,000 RPM. It still revs out. Sounds really good. I know there's lots of sort of fake noise going on, but it's loud. You know, it's got a lot of grip until it hasn't got grip, and then it slides beautifully because there's so much torque. You know, you touch the throttle and you get this instant boost from the turbochargers. It's lag-free stuff. Yeah, this is worth further investigation. Also, get a load of this. So if I turn it off and turn it on, because it has no starter motor, listen to how instantaneous it is. Bah! Starts like a 918 Spider. It's go bah! And when it idles, there's a roughness to it. Bah, 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 bah. It's a bit like a sort of classic racing 911. There's a lot more going on here than I thought. Your base GTS is now, I wouldn't want to tangle one of these in a GT3. I think you'd get shown a clean pair of the heels. But what they've ended up with is a nice linear power delivery. So you get a surprising, suits you amount of torque when you get going. Then the mid-range builds, and then you still get some spice after 7 as well. So look, if this is the future of what Porsche can do, I'm quite excited by it, really. Much, much more interesting than I'd expected. It's not some plug-in, Oh, you get 30 miles of electric range. I'm not really sure anyone wants that in a 911, do they? So, just a little bit. When I've got the thing fully stiff, I've got a little bit of understeer there. But a little bit of push. But then I suppose 911s are supposed to understeer, aren't they? That's what they do for a living. Maybe that's where you feel a bit of the weight, is that push. It's got very wet. I do feel sorry for them. They've come all the way to southern Spain, and it's like being in Milton Keynes. Let's try ourselves a skidola down here, shall we? So we'll go second gear skidola. Give it a prod. And there she goes. Loads of grip, quite predictable. Maybe that is the ultimate test of all this new tech. Does it disrupt the driving experience? Right here, I don't think it does, because the way that mass affects a car is in getting it going in a straight line, isn't it? Well, this has got so much more get up and go because the turbos spool up so quickly. The PDCC, the Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control, which is the way the roll bars can stiffen up according to direction changes, well, that is now all attached to the high voltage system, so it happens even quicker. You can definitely feel the way this car can throw support on a corner that needs it. It's impressive. I use that word a lot. Not impressive, but it is. All of it is impressive. Maybe this is the ultimate test. If you came here in a 993 Carrera S, I reckon it would feel lazier in direction changes. It would feel so slow you'd laugh at it. So does that mean this is progress? It has to, doesn't it? Yeah, it's just, the only thing is for me, it's a big car. 992 is a big car. If this was your everyday wheels. Whew.